Welcome to a very special edition of A Gamer Looks at 40. Well, maybe not special. Hopefully fun and entertaining. Volume 3 of my Side Quests series. If you're new to the show, when I collect these interviews, not everything goes into a show. There's lots of stuff on the cutting room floor, and instead of leaving it there to rot and be swept away into the garbage, I put it into one of these. It's a grab bag of stories and thoughts and opinions. That's just a really fun, just amalgamation of humorous and lighthearted and meaningful and deep anecdotes and opinions. This is a long episode, so let's jump right into it. We're going to start off with George, our good friend, G to the next level on Twitch and Twitter and everything else, an amazing Sega streamer and other things too. He doesn't just stream Sega, he does a whole bunch of stuff. He tells us about some of his games from the NES era, why we shouldn't really hate LGN as much as we do, why you should really play games for yourself, and a call to action and played little games the critics may have ignored. Did you have like a Master System or an NES or any of that?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
From Atari, we went on to the NES after that.
Right.
I think I might have mentioned that. If I didn't, I apologize.
That's
but
okay.
Yeah, it's like from the Atari, we went on to the NES after that. Because the funny thing about that is that I kind of got exposed to the NES because at a Pizza Hut over by my parents' house, they had a Play Choice 10. And with that Play Choice 10, that was my first real exposure to Nintendo stuff. And once again, my dad was there. Yep. And he knew, because, the Play Choice 10 was basically a walking advertisement for the NES. Like, it really was. So he saw that, and then, like, hey, can we get an NES? And then, but that's when we got our Nintendo. So, but nice. I definitely had a big-time 8-bit experience. I love the NES. Like, it's possibly, with the exception of maybe the Nintendo Switch, I think that it's my favorite Nintendo console of all time. I've got about I think like 60 or 70 complete in box NES games in my collection.
Okay.
And some of my all-time favorite games really come from that. Like, I absolutely love Ninja Gaiden. Like, Ninja Gaiden's one of my personal favorites, as much as, it bothers with me sometimes because it's really hard. But
really hard.
Like, I love that. I love Battletoads, Vice Project Doom. That's one of my favorite games on the system. Mario 3, one of my all-time favorite games.
Yep.
Mario 3 is just, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And there's so many diamonds that are really in the NES library that I still to this day haven't touched. One game that on the NES that I always rep that I challenge anybody to play, and most people are like, really, is TNC Surf Designs 2. Thriller Safari. That's another one of my favorite NES games. That game's great. It's hard. It's super hard.
I've never heard of this.
Oh, it's awesome.
Never heard of it.
So but you've heard of TNC Surf Designs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, take that game and take everything about it and throw it out the window. Basically,
okay,
now all it is just, it's a side scroller now. Like, it's a platformer style game. Instead of it being like a skateboarding or a surfing style game, now you do skateboarding and you do surfing, but you're basically in the role of Thriller, a gorilla. You're supposed to save your girlfriend, however. And it's so good.
Okay.
And a lot of people missed it. And also because people see that LJN logo and they immediately write it off. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No. Like, play that. It's great.
The LJN hatred, and of course that the AVGN, of course, lit that fuse. I gotta say, not all of those games are terrible. Interesting game I played from that era a while back now for another podcast. Friday the 13th. Everyone says they despise it. It's a pretty good game. Sorry, y'all. It's actually kind of good. It's actually decent. I mean, it's got some really, really good ideas. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now, I mean, personally, I'm like, it's okay. The thing is, to me, it's like it's good once you know what you're doing. Once you learn to figure out what you're doing, then it's okay.
Yeah, and that's the key. I mean, maybe you have to make a little map for yourself for the woods and such, but I love the concept of someone explained it to me very well. You just have to imagine yourself. You're not running from Jason. You need to be pursuing him.
Yes.
Use that mentality, and it's a whole lot more fun. And you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be killing Jason, not running and hiding. Gotcha.
Yeah,
but there's lots of really good ideas in that game. And again, just one of those things. It's best to play for yourself sometimes, so.
Yeah,
cool, man.
And that's normally what I say to everybody. It's like, and I say to myself too, because like, people will say, well, I trust your opinion. Like, hey, that's awesome. But the thing is that you should trust your own opinion. I say, I challenge anybody, play a game. Like, if you're really interested, take your reviewers and whatnot with a grain of salt, but you should really try it out for yourself,
Yeah, I
And
mean, yeah.
another one that if we're talking about NES games that I really like that really got a bad rep due to that. I mean, much respect to AVGN. I still love
Oh yeah,
AVGN
no,
and
no,
his
no. I'm not
channel,
trying to.
but
Yeah,
one that I'm just like is Die Hard. Die Hard NES. I love that game. Like I absolutely love that game. It's hard. Again, it's just another one. It's really difficult, but once you know what you're doing, it's actually really awesome.
I never played it, but it's I can see how that would be a lot of fun. It's pretty, for lack of a better term, kind of crunchy because there's a lot of stuff going on. Your feet are bleeding, and you're trying to find all these different weapons and items and navigating floors. It's ambitious, I think, is the word
Yes.
I'd probably use for it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It was a game that that was basically ahead of its time. Like really when you look at other licensed games like say Predator or something like for example, that's just
Sure.
basically get from point A to point B and don't die. That's essentially what most of those games were. Die Hard did things differently because you had to figure out your bullets, you had to watch your feet, you had to learn the map, and you had to take out all the crooks while maintaining, your time. You can't dilly-dally. It's like you take too long, your game's over. And yeah, it dared you to think outside the box.
Yeah, and
while
you can't
staying
rush through
true
it.
to the source material.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, this is great.
Yeah, and you can't rush through it because you're just going to get murdered real fast. So it's it's a cool balancing act. If something's not a 9 out of 10 or an 8.5 out of 10, we just throw it away. It's like,
Right.
this is a 7.5. Forget it. I don't play 7.5s. I only play 8.5s and 9s and up.
Right.
That's all I do. And I think that's really great what you just said is that, hey, play a 7 out of 10 game. Play it because you might find something that you really enjoy in that. You might find something in there. Maybe it's not perfect, right? Maybe it's not, Sonic 2, right? Which is by most people's estimations the greatest Sonic game ever made. I'll leave that. That'll be another question for you in a second. But maybe it's not Sonic 2 or Sonic and Knuckles or one of those. But hey, it is a good game. There's value in the 7s and the 6.5s even, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Curious what your thoughts on that would be.
Oh, no, I agree. And the thing is that the funny thing is that the 9s and the 10s that are out there, it's like, oh yeah, I absolutely do want to play like those super awesome, like an amazing games. I feel like the ones that kind of hit the 6s and 7s when it comes to like review scores and whatnot, the funny thing is that I tend to be a little bit more magnetized to games like that because just like I feel like those are the ones that aren't going to get the attention that they need, and it's a shame because they'll get swept under the rug. A perfect
Absolutely.
example, one game from this generation that I need to go back and play through it again because with the DLC and everything that dropped for it, that I really liked is that it's a brawler platformer called No Straight Roads. A lot of people miss this game. It's an indie title.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's so good, and the graphics and the music are amazing. And I'm just like, wow, how are we sleeping on this? And I look at the review scores, and it's like, yeah, that's probably why. It's
probably
because
it, yeah.
a lot of people are just writing it off as it not worth their time. Now, I kind of understand that mentality because as we've grown older, as around this time frame and whatnot, we don't have a whole lot of time to play games. I mean, even myself as somebody who does YouTube, who streams, and is writing a book, I've got very little time and who wants to spend time with his friends and his wife. I have very little time to play games, but the thing is that I'm not going to, if I want to play a game, I'm going to play it. I don't want to have to take a look at somebody's reviews and be like, okay, well, I'm only going to play these games because it only got an 8.5 out of 10 average or an 85 on Metacritic or something like that. No.
Right.
If this is a cool looking game and it really resonates to me, I want to play it. There's like, I can't wait for the new cruising game that's coming out next week. Nobody's talking about it, Not next
Right.
week after. But
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it's like these things, and I mean, I guess this is kind of my mentality too. I kind of like looking at the underdogs. So like the ones that don't get a whole lot of press, the ones that don't get a whole lot of attention like that. I tend to get more magnetized to ones like that. Even Sega sometimes will come out with ones like that just like, oh, Sega put that out? Oh, kind of like a game called Resonance of Fate. It was an excellent RPG. Nobody talks about it, and Sega published it. And just like, this was a fantastic game. But it's a shame. It's like, if either you don't get the advertisements that you get, if you don't get 9s out of 10s, or if like a big YouTuber or a big streamer doesn't say anything about your game, many people just write it off, and it's a shame. So yeah, I fully agree with you on that.
Yeah, it is a shame because, again, and this is not to belabor the point, but it's kind of like I live in Austin, Texas, and as you know, And here in Austin, of course, everything's about keeping Austin weird, right? Keep Austin
Yeah.
weird. And weird Austin is rapidly disappearing. It's
It
going
is.
away. It's vast. It's very quickly disappearing. And when people bemoan, an old restaurant that's been around for 50 years that goes away, a part of my writing life is writing about local things to do in Austin, mostly music, but I also write about restaurants and used to write about breweries and beer and all that sort of stuff. And it was all hyper local. It had to live here in Austin only, or else we couldn't write about it. That's the not gimmick, but the hook of the site that I write for. And when people would say, "Oh man, can you believe this restaurant left?" My question was always, "When's the last time did you go?
Yep.
When was the last time you went there?" And usually the answer is, "It's been a couple of years." Exactly. You and everybody else, clearly. So my thing is, if you don't like the fact that you're getting the same thing from the AAA studios every single year, iterative versions of sports games and the same old follow the quest marker for the open world game. If you're bemoaning the fact that there's no variety in those AAA games, then play some of the smaller indie stuff that might be, like you were saying, a 7 or a 6.5, because there might be something there you dig. And not to get on a tear, but it's almost like listening local and eating local. Maybe play indie for some things. But again, time is limited, like you said, right? I mean, I got 2 kids. Time is limited.
Oh no, fully understand
what I
that.
mean?
But that's an excellent analogy. Like that is an absolutely excellent analogy, and I mean, this kind of goes with a lot of things. It's like, hey, if you don't like what you're seeing, make a change and vote with your wallet, vote with your time. That's basically what it is.
Exactly.
And I like supporting more of the indie companies too. Especially ones like Merge Games and Way Forward, like multiple companies like that. Like they put out such good stuff, and I feel that a lot of it doesn't, unless if it's like a bigger title like Shantae or something like that, they just get missed out on, and it's sad. But yeah, that's why I always say, it's like give the little ones a chance.
You know what's one thing we rarely give a fair shake to? Video game movie adaptations. I mean, they're tough. They seem to never respect the source material. They make crazy liberties with stories and lore. They're just never all that great. They rarely do what they're intended to do. But why? Why are they so challenging? Joey and I spend a good amount of time talking about the perils and pitfalls of video game adaptations, and then Alan Petrozzi enlightens me on a video game adaptation that should have never happened in the first place. Let's listen in. I've always hoped these things are good, because video game movies get such a bad reputation. Yep. And they're so hard to do, not to get on a video game movie rant or side story, but video game movies are so hard to do because the joy of games is the interactivity. Mm-hmm. That's what separates it from every other medium on the planet. It's right. The fact that you can control this visual marvel in front of you, as opposed to a movie, which is just a story presented to you by actors and directors that is static. And whenever video game movies come out, people bag on them because there's so many masters a director has to serve. They have to serve the film-going audience that may not know the lead character. They have to serve the fans of the franchise who've been playing the games for their entire lives, and they're going to pick apart every little thing. They have to satisfy the studio that spent the money on it and wants to market it to a certain group of people, and do all of this adaptation and still capture the joy of play without someone actually playing it. So I'm always curious about how Sonic the Hedgehog the movie serves that master, because my hope for these kind of movies is, man, I just hope you capture the spirit of the game. That even though someone's not playing it, which is the joy of video games, is playing it, no matter how popular Twitch is or anything else, the joy is really being in your hands. I hope these movies are doing that, at least capturing the spirit. And I think, I've never seen it, but I think Sonic the Hedgehog looks like it does, because the kids are into it, and that's really the market. Although, not to disparage anybody who's an adult who enjoys it, because there's definitely value for that as well. But it's cool to hear kids digging it, because that's,
they liked it a lot. And you touched on something. I don't want to veer too far off track here.
No, that's fine.
The medium, like video games, is the only medium that you can control. Like if If you're reading a book, you're sitting there. If you're listening to an album, you're sitting there. You're playing the White Album.
Right.
If you're watching a movie, you're sitting there. And if you cross pollinate between, in other words, if you're watching Star Wars the movie or you're reading Star Wars the novel, you're still sitting there. So you can
Yeah.
cry. But video games, to your point, is the only it's the only type of media that when you do make it a book adaptation, a comic adaptation, a movie, you're no longer controlling it. You're no
Right.
longer controlling your destination, what you're doing. So yeah, I think it's tougher to make a movie of a video game.
And it's also I took this makes me an expert, of course, but I took a college course, you see. Again, makes me an expert. An expert in my own mind about the challenges of adaptation between books and movies. It didn't talk about games, about books and movies. And there's a lot of things that go into adaptation. And the same thing goes with games. One of the big things is the amount of time invested. You spend 8 hours with a novel,
yes,
and you spend 10 to 15 on a game.
Mm-hmm.
You spend 2 in a movie. So it's your time investment. You have to cram a lot into a movie. Books, for example, is you read a book and you create the characters in your mind.
That's right.
And a movie has to be cast.
Yep.
So that's why when you read the Harry Potter series and you go, geez, my brain's not working, but Harry Potter doesn't look like he did in my head. This movie stinks. Well, because the director was not in your head.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Sir or ma'am. Like, they have to make that best decision based on their vision. Things that work in books and in games don't work in movies.
That's right.
You have to show, don't tell.
Great point. Great point. Yeah.
You can't spend 5 pages describing a landscape. You have to show it in 2, right?
Yes.
You can't have an 80-page monologue. You have to have a 30-second scene, right? So everything's so condensed, and the beauty of movies, of course, is the acting and the cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of games is all of that, but with the interactivity involved, which is why open world games don't tell wonderful stories.
That's right.
They do, but they don't tell them great. And you can, I don't know if you agree or not, but if you play a game like, let's say, Fallout 4,
mm-hmm.
It's my example for this. Fallout 4 is a wonderful open world game. There's so many things to do, side quests and side things and building colonies, but the story suffers because you can spend 18 hours building settlements when you're supposed to be looking for your son. So you lose the narrative drive of a movie, which is pacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get us to the next scene.
Right.
In a game, you can fart around for 18 hours.
That's right.
But when you do that, you lose the narrative drive. So how do you tell that story effectively? No worries, son. I'll see you guys. I'll see you in 3 years. I'm building colonies here in the wasteland.
I'm playing God.
He walks out of the vault going, I must find my son. Ooh, a ghoul needs my help to find his lost sheep. I don't know.
That's true.
So it's so challenging when it comes to film and games, man. And it's just capturing the fun of it. I recently watched the first Resident Evil movie for another podcast.
That I heard is a really good series. I haven't gotten into the film, the movie.
The first one's fine.
Yeah.
It's super fine. It's okay. It's like you said. I don't have extreme opinions on it. I was like, it's a movie.
It's good.
It exists.
It's
from the two. Yeah, exactly. It's baked chicken. It survives. It keeps me full.
Yeah. When I did eventually get a Nintendo 64, I got Donkey Kong 64 with that,
mm-hmm.
which also was also in tandem with maybe reruns of Donkey Kong Country, the TV show. Boy, that is hard to go back to.
I don't remember this. There was a Donkey Kong Country TV show?
Yes.
I don't remember this.
It's cursed. Don't look it up. It existed. I don't remember what channel anymore. Maybe the same one that had Sonic. I don't remember.
My fingers shake as I approach the keyboard. Oh no. That's funny. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Ooh, okay. I'm not gonna look it up. Wow, that sounds great.
It was weird. It was about as flabbergasted as I was when I was like, there was a Zelda TV show. What on earth is Captain N?
Yeah, I remember Captain N. Captain N was something else.
Then I watched those episodes of Zelda, and I'm like, this is not Zelda. Oh.
No. It's been about 3 weeks since I recorded that interview with Alan, and I have yet to dare to look up that Donkey Kong cartoon. It just sounds like something I don't need in my life. I don't think I need that to exist in my brain. What does need to exist is my next conversation with Since Spacies, our resident Sega master, Twitch streamer, YouTuber extraordinaire. Just again, you've heard a lot of him on the podcast over the last few weeks. And yeah, he's just a great dude, as you probably know already. We talk a little bit about his NES recollections, interesting because he's a Sega guy, and letting kids play video games even if they're not playing it. And then Alan comes back and tells us about a really good opportunity you can let your younger brother or younger sister play Wind Waker. The only problem is it involves Tingle. Let's jump in on the conversation. Right, that's right. My friend told me that there were games built into the Master System. I didn't realize that until I had that conversation.
Actually, thinking back on it, the NES never had that, did it? It was
no.
You got a packed-in game that you would plug in, but it was not built into the actual hardware.
And depending on the version of the NES you got, you didn't get a pack-in. Like, for example, my NES, when my parents got it for me, I didn't have Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. I didn't have.
Now that you mention it, I managed a couple of years ago to finally get my hands on an NES. I'd never owned one until just a couple of years ago.
Oh, cool.
And the box is immaculate. It's crazy. And there's no mention of a packing game. You're right.
Yeah, no, I think it's called the Control Set. I can't remember what it was, but it was one of the versions. Control Deck, that was it then.
Yeah.
And I received it, no game, but my parents, of course, had bought me games. I guess they realized, or the store told them. And I got a Rad Racer and Black Box Baseball. Those are my first two games for the NES. I never played Mario 1 to this day, and I actually streamed this a few months ago. I've never beaten the first Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers.
You got to
never beaten it.
You got to get on that.
Every year I try.
You try? What's this try business?
I try, but I try to do it legitimately. I try to start at 1-1 and go all the way through. And I did like a 2.5 hour stream on Twitch, maybe a month and a half ago or so. And I got to like 8-2, 8-3, and I got too tired. It was like past midnight, and I'm like, yep, another year. It's a year I tried.
So here's the thing. I got to borrow an NES back in the 80s. I was really intrigued by this machine, but never really had a desire to own one. And we had Ice Climber and Mario Brothers, just the original Mario Brothers. We played Ice Climber for a bit, but it was mostly about Mario Brothers and beating that. And we did end up beating it. And I think that goes to the fact that we're not getting younger, as the title of your stream, of your podcast suggests.
Basically.
And I think when you get to around about 30, your reflexes just get up and leave.
It's definitely a thing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think too. I think I'm trying to like outthink the game. Like whereas Mario Brothers, especially the first one, it's really about flow and feel, and that's when Mario
definitely Super Mario World especially, because game I think is probably one of the most perfect when it comes to how a character feels to control. That's coming from a Sega guy. I don't mind saying it.
That's fair.
The story with me and Super Nintendo was that when I was working at the hotline, one lunch I decided to go down to the local Brash's store, which is no longer in operation here in Sydney. And I walked out with a Super Nintendo and went back to the hotline. Everyone's just looking at me like, what the hell have you just gone and done? And that was my first Nintendo console. Because I never owned the NES. And when working at Sega, I got chicken pox, which is relatively late to get it. And so it really hits you harder when you're older. So I was stuck at home hallucinating with chicken pox and stricken down with that while listening to Faith No More and playing playing the Super Nintendo Mario World. It's a very vivid memory.
That is an image.
And I ended up finishing Super Mario World, completing all the Star Roads and unlocking everything in that game. And I went to play it just recently on a stream. I don't have the reflexes anymore. I can't. I don't think I can do it.
I've done recently. I recently did a run of Super Mario World, and I was able to get everything again. I actually did it with my kid, and he was like maybe maybe it was a year and a half ago now, so like 3.5.
Right.
And he had a controller in his hand pretending to play. And I was playing, but he was pretending, having a grand old time, not doing anything.
And you always look at that old photos of the little brother with the Player 2 controller, and it's not plugged in, but they don't care.
They can care less.
Just don't tell them.
I was able to get through it, and a lot of those platforming games, I think, and Mario World is a great example of this. Like you said, it's flow and feel and rhythm too, because those games really sing the best when you can just get into a rhythm with the platforming, with the jumping, and once you get in sync with the rhythms of the game, it is just glorious. It's pretty.
I just had a mental image. There's probably huge Twitter groups or Facebook groups of Player 2s out there, little younger brothers, who swear to God they finished Super Mario World when they were free, and no one's had the heart to tell them.
I'll tell you a very quick story. My son, so he's 5 now. He turned 5 maybe, about 6 months ago now. And he, again, for a while been playing video games, but he's just held the controller. He hasn't really done anything. The most he's done is we play Mario Galaxy, and he'll have the second, to point
catching all the gems. No, it wasn't stars. It was gems or something, crystals.
Star bits.
Got it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that just popped in my brain. But so anyway, he's done that. So he went over to a friend's house, and she handed him a controller for some game. It was like Lego Batman or something. I don't remember what it was, or Marvel Lego something. And he held it in his hand, and he stared at the screen expecting it to do something. And it did nothing. And he was a little flummoxed as to why nothing was happening. Now, mind you, I've been trying to get him to play Yoshi's Crafted World on the Switch, which is, you can put it on the hyper easy mode, and all you gotta do is, he's getting the hang of it. Just barely, but he's not quite at the point where he can actually play the game well. And I think he was just crestfallen. And I'm looking at him like, I just ruined this child. He thinks now games just happen. They just work magically. He thinks he doesn't have to work for his victories. And it's like, oh man.
So you touch on something there. Me as a gamer in the 80s, a game back then, not having a home console, involved putting in 20 cents and lasting only 2 minutes, and then having to reach around for another 20 cents to continue. Right. Well, I don't even think it could continue back then. It was just game over. So whereas kids now, unlimited lives, unlimited start, just press start. They're obviously going to get better at those games because they're going to get more of an opportunity to practice. And another thing that I found with kids now is I have a friend who his kid's only 10, but when he was 7, he was playing this game on an iPad and he couldn't get past this part. So he gives it to me, and there's no physical controller. It's just touch screen. And right. I tried and I just couldn't do it. And I said, mate, I can't use these controls. I can't do this. And he's like, oh, you're hopeless. And he takes it back off me and he finishes it. And I'm like, I can't do that. I need a physical controller. I can't do this touchpad stuff.
Same. I cannot play an iPad game. It's just, I need the tactility. I need to feel the buttons, and the tactility of it is missing for me. The actual, because when you have a control in your hand, you're actually pushing a thing that moves.
You're feeling around. It's muscle memory as well.
Exactly, right? When it's just when it's a touchpad, you're not feeling, you're just sliding, and there's no beginning or end to where your finger can slide, so there's no responsiveness, and I mean, it's depending on the oils of your fingers and your heat as opposed to a mechanical thing.
Yeah, the only way I can play those games is I've got a thing called a GPD XD. Great name. I love, what is it with these gaming companies and their names? I know. It is basically an Android emulator, and it looks like a 3DS. It's actually a very cool bit of kit. And you can play Android games on it, and you map the on-screen buttons to physical buttons, and that way I can play.
That makes sense.
Yeah. By the way, earlier you mentioned the star bits for Super Mario Galaxy.
Yeah.
Did Nintendo ever do a cereal called Star Bits, or did they just miss a golden opportunity?
They missed the boat big time. Wow. They missed it.
Because you see in the game, you got to feed those Star Bits to the characters.
Yes.
And that could have been a perfect segue. You too can be as powerful as Mario and his friends.
Yeah, like a little Mario, a Rosalina, a little, and then the marshmallows are the Star Bits. Oh, that's so good. I love that.
I made it. I had to write that down just to get back to that. Anyway, so
Their biggest contribution that I think impacted something the most was Tingle.
Oh, yes.
Spawned out. I'm just saying, Tingle got his own game. Rosalina did not.
When did Tingle get his own game? Why do
He got some DS games. Some Japanese-only DS games.
Oh, yeah. There are some Tingle games out there.
The weird Tingles, Rupee Land, something. Yeah.
Yikes. Oh, boy. Not great.
Hey, he's got charisma, sure. He's living his best life.
He's doing his thing, right? More power to him.
Mm-hmm. When he's not, bombing things when you plug in the Game Boy for Wind Waker, That was the best, by the way, best utilization of like, hey, little brother, you can have this, do this for me, is to give them the power of unlimited bombs.
That's pretty neat. Now, tell me the story behind this one. I don't think I know this one.
Oh, that's what the Tingle Tuner is.
Okay, now I was thinking of something. What is this Tingle Tuner? Explain.
Okay,
please.
Gotcha. Fair enough. So, in Wind Waker, when you meet Tingle, his reward for you saving him from his little jail in Windfall Island is to give you this Tingle Tuner, which is just a very cute little green Game Boy Advance with a little yellow antenna with a bulb. Mm-hmm. And it explains that if you have a Game Boy Advance and a Game Boy Link cable, you can use it to help you in the quest. That basically means that it gives you the ability to do certain things on the Game Boy Advance screen. The one I remember this the most is bombs. I can't remember if it did anything else. I just remember playing the game and seeing my friend or my sister or whoever was playing with me when I relegated to them to that duty, is seeing that nice little green reticle of death, because whatever that thing landed on could get bombed.
Oh, interesting. So
Be
you
it a
actually had
wall or
like
an
air
enemy.
support.
Yes.
Yeah, like air support basically. Oh, that's cool.
I was a little upset when they're like, when the Wind Waker HD came out, they're like, now it's messages in a bottle for the Miiverse.
Oh, lovely. Okay, the Miiverse. But it's interesting. That's cool. So remind me, because this is gonna be me just being kind of ignorant. Wind Waker was originally on the GameCube, and you were able to link up your Advance to the GameCube with a link cable.
Right.
Right. And that's what you would hand your little brother and say, here, drop the bombs. That is really neat.
Yeah, because you couldn't do anything there wasn't multiplayer in Zelda at all, except for I died, here you go, until the Four Swords. Then and that was the other reason to have the Game Boy Advance link cable. That's actually, I think, other than trading Pokemon, that was like the other best reason that it existed, and that was it.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was a thing.
Yep.
Whether or not people enjoyed it is another.
Well, that is the question, right? Whether or not people enjoyed it. Cool. Okay. The tingle. Okay. I did not know that was a thing. That sounds really fun and neat. After the break, Ian, also known as Teacher Bloke 85 on Twitter, tells us a bit about Sega's dominance in England, shares some of his favorite retro collecting stories, and then Sin Spacey's returns to talk a little bit of smack about our favorite Italian plumber. Now, whenever I do these shows, I like to spend a little time promoting something or somebody. But I don't really have anything today. I kind of scoured my feed and looked through things, and nothing really popped out at me. Lots of good people, but just nothing went, bam, here's what you're going to talk about on this episode. So for today's break, I decided to just click on my profile on Twitter, click the follow link, and find the first 10 people that pop up. So here are 10 people that recently followed A Gamer Looks at 40. Buddy_VS_gaming. He's about to start some YouTube videos, which is very cool. Biopunk2046, Twitch streamer. Check him out. Zero Hanny Zero, HANIE 0, an incredible artist. She's extremely talented. Definitely check out her stuff. Inner Demons GR, also known as the Ghost Rider podcast. It's a podcast dedicated to Ghost Rider. That sounds amazing. Collectible Hot or Hot Collectible Toys. I don't know if you're a bot. If you are, cool. If not, welcome. Thanks for the follow. Mikey Loves Retro. Self-explanatory. Studios by, the handle for Bifrost Bridge Studios. Avid Collector 86, collector with a K. He's an avid collector, y'all. Check him out. Nerdy Girl Wolfie, handle Wolf in Progress 8. And finally, MXS Retro, doing the TikTok thing. I'm old. I don't know this TikTok thing. But people do it, and they have a good time with it. Thanks to all of those fine people, including the Maybe Bot, for following me at A Gamer Looks at 40. Let's continue with the episode. So we're here to talk a bit about a strange time in, I think, video game history. And it's something that's continued on, right? But I don't think it was quite the fervor that it was in the 16-bit era between Sega and Nintendo, the Bit Wars. Obviously, the two companies were vying for supremacy. You know, Nintendo, of course, was the big dog in the playground, or a big dog in the park, and Sega was the scrappy up-and-comers who, you know, basically overtook, at least here in America, Nintendo for a brief moment until Nintendo just kind of laid the hammer down and finished them off. Yeah, finished them off, but really, you know, let's be honest, they kind of took them out. Where were you in the Bit Wars, and what were your recollections of that time, of just that constant struggle between that Sega and Nintendo?
Yeah, it was completely the other way here in the UK. I know since Spacey's mentioned about how it was in Australia, but here everyone you met was a Sega person, and every other person in my class at school had a Mega Drive. Mega Drive over here. And I was the only Nintendo kid in my class.
Wow, you're the exact opposite.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I was going against the grain even from back then.
That's awesome.
But I do remember there was one other kid in my school. It was a girl in the class the year above me who had a Game Boy. And I remember her playing DuckTales on the Game Boy in the playground and watching over her shoulder. And that's the only other person that I knew who had a Nintendo machine. Everyone else was Sega. So it was very strange. And I remember the reason I wanted a Nintendo was because there was a TV show that was on, I can't remember exactly what channel, but it was called the Super Mario Challenge. And they got two contestants to kind of speed run or collect as many coins as they could in levels from Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3. A lot of people say The Wizard was their moment for seeing Super Mario Bros. 3.
Yep.
A Super Mario Challenge was my moment where I first saw Super Mario Bros. And thought, he can jump on these creatures. And I just saw that, and I was just obsessed from that point. And there's a wonderful tale that my mum will absolutely corroborate, that when it got to Christmas, I think I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I'd opened up these wonderful presents that my folks had got for me, and opened up the last present, and it was a copy of Super Mario Bros. 2 on the NES.
Ooh,
and
yes.
I kind of looked at her, and I said, Mum, this is wonderful, but I'm sorry it won't play on our Amstrad. It's Nintendo. And she said to me, oh, I'm sorry. We'll get it changed. We'll exchange it for something else. I'm sorry. I thought it was for Amstrad. And I said, it's okay. I love you. And then she whips out the secret last present,
No,
and it was the
that's
NES.
amazing. Yes, that's great. Oh, I love it.
Mum was the hero.
That's so good. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
She's fantastic. But
That's a great. Wow, and she fooled you. You fooled me. That's.
I can recall my 6-year-old self running around the front room. Oh my, it's a Nintendo.
That's amazing. Oh, what a great moment. How
it was
fun.
incredible. And again, it was just so strange because talking to all my school friends saying, oh, have you played this? It's on the Nintendo. And no, we've got Master System, we've got Mega Drive. Ooh, what's that? And I'd go over to their houses and see these games that looked pretty cool, but to me, they were not a patch on Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt and things like that. But looking back on them now, I mean, I said I'm a collector at the moment, and I'm into a phase at the moment where I'm collecting pretty much anything Sega that I missed out on back when I was younger. So a few years back, I actually got a Mega Drive for the first time and a Mega CD, and I've actually played things like Night Trap and Echo the Dolphin, things that I missed out on back in the day. And I'm really, really enjoying them.
That's pretty cool. That's a great story of just that kind of that surprise. What an awesome little thing. Yeah.
Absolutely
That's
fantastic.
cool. And I love the fact that you didn't throw a fit or scream or freak out. You're just like, Mom, that's cool. And she was
That's
just
not
probably
me.
like, oh, that's awesome.
I'm just
That's
so
really
placid.
Cool. You were just like, oh, Mom, this didn't work out. That's really,
It's okay.
really neat. Really neat. Let's kind of pivot a little bit to your collection.
Sure.
Yeah, I recently did a collecting episode, as you know, but I still like hearing these stories, and there's always opportunities for more episodes about things. I leave myself freedom to just, you know what? If I get more collector stories, I will do another one.
Yeah.
You know, what do I care? So I'd love to hear about your collection. Firstly, kind of size and scope, you know, kind of what you have and what your favorite thing to collect is, and then maybe some of the pieces that are really personal to you.
Sure. Well, I'm currently surrounded by PS3 and Xbox 360 and a few Sega Saturn games as well in this room. My collection is spread out over a couple of rooms, and it's quite sizable. I think at the moment I'm really, really interested, like I said earlier, in Mega Drive and Sega Saturn games. Mainly because I never had either. Growing up, a friend of mine did have a Saturn, and I remember going over to his house once or twice and seeing the demo of Panzer Dragoon Saga, and saying to myself, at some point I need to play this. So I do actually own a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga now, and I did pay a stupid eBay price.
I hear that was those Saturn games I hear are getting like just crazy expensive.
Yeah, there's a few of them that are they're going for really, really silly money at the moment. I was very fortunate when I got that copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga because it's missing the slipcase that both of the normal Saturn cases will go into. So I got a little bit of a discount, but still a little bit more than I'd normally pay for a retro game.
Yeah, I hear those prices are getting crazy. Well, anything else in your collection that you feel like this was like a personal kind of thing?
Yeah, I was very fortunate, really, that I had... back in 1999, I took a trip over to the States to visit some family members, and they took me to their local Babbage's, where I could pick up, a couple of games that I'd been saving some money for this trip and thinking, I've got to take some games back. And I remember picking up from the shelf Clock Tower 2. Very, very difficult game to come by now. I just looked at it and thought, I like the first one, but then I put it back on the shelf in favour of Parasite Eve.
Interesting.
Which I don't regret. That is one of my favourite PS1 games.
It's a good one. I've never played it, but I've watched people play it.
Outstanding. Yeah. If that gets a remake, I will buy it day one.
Yeah,
but
that's one I'd like to give a try to.
I'm quite well travelled when it comes to things like this because I've visited quite a few states on the East Coast and taken a few trips over there myself a couple of times. And every time I'll bring myself something back that you just can't get over here.
That's cool.
Well, for one thing, take the Xenosaga trilogy on PS2. The only one that came out over here was number 2.
That's random.
Yeah, the middle part of the trilogy comes out over here.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Are the other? I've never played them, but are they required? Like, do they have a continuity?
Yes.
Oh boy, that's not good.
No, the version that came out over here came with, packaged in, a DVD with the movie of all the cutscenes from the first game so you could catch up.
Oh, that's terrible.
And then they didn't
no.
even finish the story by bringing part 3 over.
Oh my gosh, that's not good.
No, so I'm in a very interesting position where I've got the PAL copy of Xenosaga 2 with the DVD, because of course I have. But my copy of Xenosaga Part 1 was bought in my home city of Leeds, UK. I bought Part 2 in South Carolina, and I bought Part 3 in Pennsylvania.
That's
My collection comes from far and wide.
Yeah, really. That's really good.
It's
That's
fantastic.
really good.
I mean, I'm just looking around, and there's various oddities as well. I'm actually sat right next to my trusty Virtual Boy.
Oh, you have a Virtual Boy. Okay. Very nice.
The headache machine.
That is the headache machine. That is the eye strain device.
Oh, it's vile, but I love it.
You know, it's funny. My best friend Joey would say the exact same thing. It's vile, but he loves it. He has a lot of fondness for that Virtual Boy. He's unabashed about his.
Every time I find a cartridge for it when I'm out on my travels, cartridge for the Virtual Boy. I'll have that.
And they're probably not too expensive, I imagine. Although, again, these days in the world of collecting, everything's expensive. So.
Yeah, boxed copies, you'd expect to pay quite a bit, but unboxed, you can pick those up. That's no problem.
That's funny. Very cool. What drives you to collect? Like, what's that driving force in collecting?
You know what? For a lot of it, it's a case that I want to play lots and lots of games. I'm not the kind of person that normally sticks with one game until I've finished it. I just want to play a sample of lots of different games. And once I get so far through a game, if I'm switched off by it, or I think that I've seen everything that's out, I'm done with that. But I do like having them in my little library that I can keep going back. And if I wake up one morning and think, I want to play SimCity, I can just go into my game room, grab the SNES cartridge, plug it in, and play it. I don't have to faff about with downloads or have I got the license for that? What's my Steam password? Things like that. As much as I do love Steam as a platform, for me, just the ownership of the physical cartridge, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
And for a lot of cases, for myself, it's just getting out and about and visiting, retro game shops. I've made quite a few good friends from going to the retro game fairs that come round every now and then, and going out to the retro game shops in my area. I usually do a round trip of about 2 or 3 in a day, and come back with some random cartridges, random PS1 games that don't usually cost too much, but it's a nice little day out for me, and it's, I think, a lot better than just sitting in and playing the game. I'll go out and talk about the games with, the proprietors, things like that.
I think it sounds like that the community part of it is almost as important as the game itself, which I think is very interesting. And that's why I'm a big fan of actual stores as well. Is that there is something really fun about going to a retro game shop and looking at some of the old games, and not just a nostalgia hit, but also just talking with the guy behind the counter, right? Like, hey,
definitely. I mean,
a guy or gal, I should say, but the person behind the counter.
Yeah, it's the guys in my local regular game shop that actually coined my nickname TB.
Oh, really? Where did it come from?
It's what they started calling me when I came in, because I am a teacher as my occupation, and it's the teacher bloke. And every time I'd come into spit your chewing gum out, lads, the teacher bloke's watching. Eventually it just got shortened down to TB. And morning TB, how you doing TB? And every now and then they just come out from behind the counter and said, we've got a game in here that we've never heard of. You might like it. It sounds like your kind of thing. So they usually keep an eye out for me, and usually they're spot on with their recommendations.
That's pretty good.
It's awesome.
That's really good. That's very fun. Very cool, man.
I just love that kind of, getting to know people. As a kind of introvert growing up, it's really strange now that I've become this kind of person that, I'm quite open to talk about games, video games, anything. It's my specialist subject, and if you get me talking about it, I'll not shut up.
Well, that's good. And you found something that you love, right? That
Absolutely.
you're passionate about. You're extremely knowledgeable
Thank you.
about the games and everything else. And it sounds like a cool collection. It sounds like there's a lot of stories there that I'd love to mine a little bit more. Do you know who else does a good bit of collecting? Our own Joey Corio. And he's old school, man. He's been doing the collecting for 30 years. As long as I've known him, he's been acquiring systems, which is why he has such a really cool collection. He's not getting it now. He just kept everything he had as he was growing up. Joey shares with me my favorite story about a Game Boy Advance game that everyone probably knew about, but didn't know some special secrets inside.
So you remember in Mario Advanced, remember I hacked that cartridge? Go back in
Yes.
time now. This is 16,
Yes.
17 years ago.
Still have it. I won't get rid of it. That's a prized game possession. For those who don't know, I might have mentioned it in the Mario episodes. I have a copy of Super Mario Brothers Advance 4, which is just Super Mario Brothers 3 for your
Right.
Game Boy Advance. And the Game Boy Advance, that cart allowed you to plug it into the e-reader
Good job.
and scan cards.
Well done, Bill.
And Joey Corio here is the only one of 8 people in the United States who owns an e-reader and the cards required for this. So I have a cartridge. I met you at, this is going to be a digression, but this is important. I met you at McDonald's, I want to say.
Yeah.
Or something. It might have been like a McDonald's. And you're like, oh, Bill, bring your copy of Advance 4. All right. So I walk over to Advance 4. You plunk in this e-reader and you just start scanning these cards. And these cards are giving me like bonus levels. I have like 36 bonus levels on this copy of Mario Advance 4.
That's right. But in addition to the bonus levels, it incorporated other aspects of the game. So it gave you the enemies, one card you swipe, and now the enemies, the Goombas of Mario 1, were magically in the game. You swiped another card, and the turnips and the vegetables that are in the ground that you pull from Mario 2,
Yep.
that feature is now magically in the game. You'd swipe another card, and the cape, which was the power-up in Super Mario World, the cape is now magically embedded in the game. And that's it's like it took Mario 3, which is the best Mario of the series, in my opinion, and it made it a greatest hits. It took all these other elements from every single Mario game in the series and turned it into this magnificent masterpiece where you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is unreal.
I'll never get rid of that thing.
I'm in playing Mario 3, flying with a cape, with the turnip in my hand. So it's like, so I'm bringing this up. Because that is Sonic Mania.
Now, we all know Since Spacey's loves himself some Sega. He worked for the company. He's been a collector for years. He streams it. The man's all about it, and that's great. Love what you love. But what about his opinions on Mario? And does Alan Petrozzi actually agree? Let's find out together. Mario has been considered like the everyman. You can just kind of.
I don't get Mario. Like,
it's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. What? He's an Italian plumber. And
it's
I don't get it. I really okay. My criticisms of Nintendo is that they've gone into this now world where they've established their characters and they won't budge, and they won't experiment, and they won't try something daring and new.
That's true,
and that's sad that you won't see a new Mario game come out with a brand new character. Like, when was the last Nintendo Mario World character that came out?
I would have to say
Pauline,
and this is-
maybe, but that's an old character revived.
Rosalina, maybe Rosalina from the Galaxy
Yeah,
series, but that was at least 10 years ago.
That's one thing I'd like to see Nintendo do more of, is introduce more new characters in that world.
They do stick to the same old, because there is still. It seems like the Mario world has an infinite amount of shelf life. And it's interesting you put it that way, because it's why. You're right. It's the same characters for the past 35 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I never got, even as back in the 80s, I used to say, but it's just a plumber. What's the big deal? I don't get it.
I had a whole show about Mario, and I actually had a whole conversation with somebody who's a huge Mario fan, and we talked about, what is more important, is the character of Mario or just the mechanics of Mario?
Mechanics, 100%.
And we kind of landed on mechanics, but he also says that there is a character to Mario that and I'm not want to quote it verbatim because it's been on the show, but it's interesting that you say that, because he does seem like a blank slate. And most people you talk to about the character of Mario, they don't really talk about the character of Mario. They say that he's, a blank slate, the everyman. And then you talk about the mechanics, which are, of course, world-class mechanics. But
I still think one of the coolest moments in video gaming history was when I actually get a little bit teary just thinking back on it. It's just because it's so cool. And again, this is a Sega guy here, but the Mario 3 commercial back in the early 90s. How cool was that? That just showed you how big a character Mario was in that era. They're just a bunch of kids walking out, one kid at a time. Mario, Mario, Mario. And they're all chanting, and then the camera zooms out and it shows the whole world is chanting Mario.
He's back in the all-new Super Mario 3. Nintendo, now you're playing with power.
And it's effective.
It is so powerful, and I'm actually amazed that they were able to pull it off, a commercial like that in that era. Because now they would use CGI and whatever, but back then they somehow managed to get the camera to pull out and show the world. And
it's gorgeous. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing.
Very simple and very effective commercial. I don't think there's been a commercial for gaming as effective as that one.
Yeah, lore in Nintendo games sometimes, just doesn't seem to. They're great at making games. They're good at mechanics and levels and design. That's what they're best at. Mm-hmm. And I had one of my guests who used to be one of the Sega Game Masters in Australia. He was one of the guys on the phones. He was on the 1-900 number. He was like one of the people you called if you had a game question.
Those are fables around my time.
Oh yeah, no, there are some fables, and he was telling me how he doesn't like the fact that Nintendo doesn't make new characters. He's like, when's the last time there's been a new Mario character? And I thought,
The fans tried. It didn't get very far, but they tried with Bowsette.
Oh yeah, Bowsette, yeah. I mean, the last one really was maybe Rosalina for the Galaxy series.
Oh god, you might be exactly right.
I think that was the last time they made a new character, and it struck
unless
me
you consider like digging Pauline out of the grave of Donkey Kong, I think.
I mentioned that. He's like, but that's from Donkey Kong. That's a Donkey Kong character. It's just a resurrection. It's not a new character. He wishes that there'd be more innovation in characters in Nintendo. And I'm like, it's a very interesting idea, because they trade on their existing properties constantly. That's what they do. And now we've come to the part of the show where Joey and I talk about nothing. It's the show about nothing. Not really nothing. Let's not get crazy here. At 59 minutes on the dot, Joey and I talk about our first CD, which is Video Game Tangential. And then we just go on a tangent about some of the old haunts we used to frequent in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Here's this very side. This will be on Side Quests. This is not related. What was your first CD? The first CD you ever received or bought, but first one you ever had in your hand.
The first CD I ever got was Queen, and it was their greatest hits.
Nice.
It was my uncle for my 13th birthday that got me a CD player, and he got me Queen. He got me Queen's greatest hits to go with it, and I wore that CD out.
Nice.
Yeah, that was I mean, nobody was really listening to it at my age, but you and me always appreciated great music, and Freddie Mercury on CD quality, it was great.
For me, the first CD I ever received, there were basically two at the same time. The first one was the soundtrack to Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo.
That's cool.
The Killer Instinct came with a CD, and it was called Killer Cuts. And Killer Cuts with a K, of course. It was this electronica techno dance CD. It was all the stage songs of Killer Instinct.
That's amazing.
And the second one was a promotional disc for the soda Surge. Do you remember Surge the soda? Okay. Surge the soda. I don't know how I received this. I don't know where I got this thing. I don't know what madman or mad person put this in my mailbox out of spite. But I received this CD that was promotional for Surge, and it had like Chemical Brothers on it, and it had like a couple of like electronica artists of the time.
Cool.
And if you put it into your computer, it had like a program would pop up that lets you play the music from this little UI on your
really
computer.
cool.
It had like little liner notes, but I got these things. I never had a CD player. So I just held on to them until I actually received the CD player.
That's right.
And then the first CD I ever bought with my own money was Melancholy and Infinite Sadness.
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great album to buy. That's awesome.
And you know my history with the Smashing Pumpkins, so that was the first album I bought with my own
as
money.
well. One of the greatest bands of all time.
Yep. I will not dispute that, as you know. Coming soon to another podcast, perhaps available on Patreon. Maybe we'll see. There might be another one coming.
Hey, I'm in. Just send the bat signal up, and I'm there.
Now, before I get to this next segment with Joey, I need to set this up with a little bit of context. A few weeks ago, Joey sent me a video commercial for the New Jersey Lottery, and it was set in one of our local towny bars in Bloomfield called Opal's. It's been around forever, and I call it a towny bar in the best way possible. And it's not a negative, it's just a place where people in town can go for cheap beer and good vibes and for a couple of laughs. It's kind of those classic hole in the wall watering holes. And he sent me this video, and it was just neat to see one of our old haunts on this New Jersey Lottery commercial. So towards the end of our conversation, Joey brings this up, and here we go. That's it. We could do this every week. We used to do this every week.
Dude, I'd be down anytime, man. Anytime.
I know.
It's an hour, 2 hours out of my week that brings me back. It
man.
helps me take my mind off of work and the kids and life. Anytime I sent you the commercial. I couldn't believe it. I was watching the Devil game, and I'm like, it's
That's so
Opals.
funny.
I can't believe this.
Yep.
I was texting my buddies because I brought some of my other friends there too. I texted my brother-in-laws. We saw the Yankees playoff game, the play-in game, not last season, but the season before that there. They wanted to know a good place near Belleville. I said, I know a great place. It's small. It's a hole in the wall. And they're like, oh, we love it. We love dive bars. I'm like, that's exactly what this place is. And I couldn't believe it. It was on TV. I'm like, I flipped out. I'm like, I got to tell Bill.
With really good wings and warm peanuts.
Warm nuts.
Warm nuts. Come to Opals. Come for the beer. Stay for the warm nuts. That's the slogan there at Opals. Good old Opals. My brother still talks fondly of Opals.
It's the best. I mean, where can you go and get a $2 beer? I mean, they're $2 there on Thursdays. You can't beat it.
I'll tell you a quick Opals story. My brother and I went to Opals. This is a while ago, obviously. And we went there to watch a Devils game, as we do. So we go to Opals, we're watching Devils game, and they have, standard beer. They don't have anything fancy at Opals.
No.
They got, Budweiser, Coors Light, etc. But on this other tap, they had this thing called Golden Monkey.
Golden Monkey.
Golden Monkey. And Bobby and I, we didn't know. We were like, what's this Golden Monkey? So we're like, well, let's try this Golden Monkey. So we try it. We start drinking it. They give it to us in these pint glasses, of course. After 2, my brother and I are going, oh, I love that monkey. Give me more. 2. The Golden Monkey is a Belgian triple, depending on your pronunciation. It's a Belgian triple. It's a craft beer from Victory Brewing out of Pennsylvania. And it's about 8 and change ABV. And they're serving these things in pint glasses, 16 ounces, because they had no idea what they had.
It's 10. I just looked. It's 10.
Golden Monkey's 10?
Yes, it's 10% ABV.
Okay. So anyway, they
For
had
a
no idea
12
what they were
ounce.
serving.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they were serving Golden Monkey, so I guess, which is a 10% ABV Belgian Tripel, which is delicious, by the way. It's great beer. They're serving them in pint glasses when they're normally served in like smaller, like 8-ounce pours. That's what they'll usually serve those in. So imagine a beer that you just drink, a standard Coors Light's, 4.5%, maybe 5%. This is double that.
Oh yeah.
So every beer is 2.
They're
every
hitting
beer is 2. After 2 of those, which you just are just quaffing and they're delicious, so you're drinking them fast. My brother like, give me another one of those monkeys, whatever. Give me a monkey. It was like the 3rd period, and we were already half in the bag. We were just like, bring in the monkey. And finally, Sin Spacey's returns to tell a story that actually reminded me of something that's truly important.
I got a really cool story about never assuming.
Cool.
Working in a video game store after I worked at Sega, this kid walks in through the front door. He has no shoes on. He has shorts on, shirt, and messy hair, snivelly nose. And I'm thinking, what's this? It was weird. It was not usual to see a kid just walk in by themselves. So I walked up to the kid. I said, are you right, mate? He comes up to me and he goes, my dad has just told me to come here because he has just won lotto and he told me to spend all this. And he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a wad of hundreds. I'm like, what?
What?
And I've never seen that many hundreds before, and I have not seen that many since.
Oh, no. Wow.
Like, I don't actually know how many thousands of dollars that kid had on him. And
wow.
But my question was, where's your dad? Oh, he's off buying a car. Of course he is.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So
no surprise.
we asked to. I said, look, mate, wait here. Because I knew that this was not normal, and I went out the back to go get the boss, and I said, hey, look, you won't believe what's just walked through the door. Told the boss about the story. He comes out and he says, all right, well, what's your parents' number? We'll give them a call because I want to just make sure that this is legit. Phones up the mum. You go, yeah, look after him because he's had a pretty rough go of it lately, but we've just won the big one, so he's your VIP now.
Wow.
He bought Super Nintendo, Mega Drive. He bought one of each game, all the controllers. It was just like, and I was just basically grabbing one of each and putting it behind the counter for him and wrapping up the bill.
Wow.
And so my point is, you could look at a kid and think, oh, what does he want? He's probably just going to ask when's Street Fighter 2 coming out on the Mega Drive or something. But you never know what what can happen when you talk to someone.
Yeah, you never know who's got a
wad
pocket full of hundreds. Yeah, you never know who's got. Yes, it's true. In Austin, I live in Austin, Texas, and we call those the flip-flop millionaires. They're people who just walk around like they're just regular people. Regular.
But they're walking around in what we call fongs. You guys call them flip-flops.
Flip-flops, yeah.
Fongs are something different in your part of the world. Yes.
They're entirely different. But yeah, no, it's interesting. You never know. Yeah, you never know who people are, and everyone's got a story. Don't assume, and everyone has a story. If that's not a mission statement for this show, I really don't know what is. And amazing how this kind of book ended. I didn't plan it this way. I've been editing this thing for 4 days now and just kind of getting through it. But we started with George talking about appreciating the sevens and the sixes in the gaming world. Not assuming that a game is garbage or bad because reviewers said it is, or because a famous streamer hasn't played it. Give those games a try. Don't assume that they're less valuable or bad. You may find those hidden gems. And we end with the story of an instant millionaire who walks into an Australian video game shop and buys out the place. Cleans them out. Supermarket sweep. And you have never known it by looking at the kid. Never assume. And as I sit here at 12:45 on a Thursday night / Friday morning, I don't know what the connective tissue is between those two things. But what I do know is it's nice to know there are interesting things in the world that are hidden right beneath our noses. And all we have to do is take the 5 minutes to seek those out. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of A Gamer Looks at 40. I just realized this is episode 25. We've made it. We've hit the big 25. This is one of those milestones I may get a badge for from Buzzsprout. And I guess I should have picked something a little cooler for 25, like something a little more milestone-y. But I'm glad we did this. Side quests is kind of a good encapsulation of what this show is about. So if this is your first time listening, thanks for giving it a try. If this is your 25th time listening, thanks for taking this journey with me. Follow me on all the socials. Well, just two. Facebook and Twitter at AGamerLooksAt40. If you have a story, DM me or email me at AGamerLooksAt4040@gmail.com. And until next time, don't assume.